my show today, you're going to meet a woman who says that all law-abiding citizens, particularly women, should definitely own and carry a gun. We're also going to hear from a man whose wife and son were killed execution style, with a gun from his own family collection. And we're going to meet a board member of the National Rifle Association, a board member who says that gun controls will only make it easier for criminals to commit crimes. But first, I'd like you to welcome Paxton Quigley from Los Angeles, California, and Mike Robbins from Chicago, Illinois. Mike is a former police officer who was shot 12 times while working on a case. He says that he is proof to the pudding that carrying a handgun is no guarantee of protection. Paxton, on the other hand, wrote a book entitled Not an Easy Target, and she says she's always believed that she could count on the police to protect her until a good friend of hers was raped in her own home. She now believes that all women should own and carry a handgun. That's a tough statement for a lady to make.
Well, I guess it is. I used to be very much against guns, but a friend of mine was raped in her own home, and she had a chance to call 911, and unfortunately the police came a half hour too late.
And you believe that if she had a handgun in her home, she would have stopped the crime?
Yes, because I took her to the hospital that night, and I asked her, out of the clear blue sky, I asked her, if you had a gun, do you think you could have stopped the attacker? And she thought about it, and she said, yes, I would have had plenty of time. And I started looking at myself, living alone and always relying on the police. And I said, this is not going to happen to me. And I literally changed my mind and decided that I wanted to learn how to shoot a handgun for self-defense.
Because there are people who say, leave it to the cops. That's what they're there for. They're the ones who have the gun.
They come afterwards. When a crime happens, it happens fast. And the police can't be there unless they happen to be on your block. And so it's very important for people to become responsible and take care of themselves. And one of the best ways, if you're trained, and you must be trained, that's really important, is to own a handgun for self-defense. And you must be a responsible adult. That means that you have to keep your gun in a safe place so that your kids can't get a hold of it.
Mike, you had a gun in a safe place. You were a police officer.
Yes,
Ended up being shot 12 times. You still carry the bullets in your body, some of them. What do you say when I say guns in a household?
Well, guns are, right now statistics show that guns are you are 43 more times likely to be injured by the gun that you brought into your home for protection. You may be injured by that very same gun through domestic violence, through accidents that happen, children finding guns. It's very dangerous to have a gun in the home.
So you disagree, don't have a gun?
I think we totally disagree, and I know he has some statistics. There was a study that was done at the University of Chicago this past year in which it clearly showed that in states where there is a right you can have a right to carry a gun, that brutal crimes go down.
That study was done by Dr. John Lott, and that study was found to be very bogus in this.
Bogus?
Yes, it was. Yes,
I totally disagree with you. I totally disagree with you.
That's what makes America so great, that we can agree to disagree.
Well, I want to sit in. I want you two to talk with each other because, I mean, most of us think about a gun. Lots of Americans have guns in their household that they keep safely away from children. But there are also Americans who are afraid that that gun could end up in the wrong hands.
Exactly. You talk to mothers that have lost children due to accidents in the home where children have found guns. There are estimated, I would say, maybe 3 million latchkey children in the United States right now. These are children that come home at the end of the day with no parental supervision. Children are inquisitive by nature. When mom and dad aren't around, they will look around. When I go around to schools talking to children, talking to high school kids and grade schoolers about guns in the home, and I ask, one of the first questions I ask is, who knows where the gun is in the house? Practically every child in that classroom will raise their hand. I then ask them, where is the gun in the house? And they are very detailed as to where that gun is. They will tell me where, in what shoebox, in the closet, where at in the closet, in the coat.
And I agree that parents should not keep a gun in a shoebox or up high in a closet. They have to keep it in a safe place. And there are these small portable safes that you can buy which have a special combination which only you know.
But are you going to have time to do that when somebody breaks in your house?
Yes, it sounds ridiculous, but yes, you can. It's just a 3-punch combination, and you can get your gun out literally in a couple of seconds.
Okay, what do you say up here, sir?
I'd like to ask the gentleman on the panel, how did it feel when you were shot 12 times? Like, did you have like any flashbacks or, nightmares
Yes,
after you do?
I still have problems periodically at night, sleeping comfortably at night. I have dreams.
How did it happen?
September 10th of 1994, my partner and I, we were assigned to a gang crimes unit, and I've been working gang crimes in Chicago for just about 9 to 10 years. I've been on the Chicago police force, as well as working in an undercover capacity with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We responded to a call of a gang disturbance, and upon approaching into an alley, we were ambushed by just one lone offender. This offender had ran up to the driver's side of the car, our unmarked vehicle, and I happened to have my window down. And before I could exit the vehicle, he ran right up to the side of my car and put the gun in my face and just began shooting and shooting and shooting. So I did not have any. The moment I had the gun in my hand, but I could not raise my arm because I was immediately shot in the arm.
Did you change your opinion about the average Joe Schmo owning a gun after that incident?
No, my opinion hasn't changed. I've always been against gangs, against guns. The availability and accessibility of guns are a primary focus of mine, long before I got shot.
And meanwhile, Paxton is saying because of people like the ones who shot you is why people like women need to have a gun.
Well, women are vulnerable, and rape keeps going up in the United States, and women are getting more and more fearful, and so more and more women are turning to guns as the answer.
But women are vulnerable, I agree, but then there are a number of cases where women have really resorted to other measures besides gun ownership as far as self-protection.
Let's take a break, and if there are alternatives to having a gun, we certainly want to hear them. But I think there are many people, many women living alone, who are going through this very same trial and tribulation within their own minds about whether or not to own a gun. When we come back, we're going to hear several stories, different ones that talk about the impact of guns in our lives. We're going to talk to a father who lost his son and his wife to gun violence, and he's going to reveal his feelings about gun control. You may be surprised with what he says when we return. Today about guns. Many of you at home may be wondering, should our family have a gun in the house or should we not? We've been listening to two opposing views, one from Paxton, a lady who says every woman in this country ought to have a gun. That would keep down rape and attack on women especially, and she goes as far as to even teach women how to shoot. Mike, a police officer who got shot at 11 times, says guns are not the answer here. We have to be very, very careful about using guns in our house because they can be used on us. Interesting, Paxton, this lady back here had something that she wanted to say. Come on and say what you were going to say about women having guns. Did you agree with her?
No, I didn't. And what happens, Paxton, is that adults have gotten this attitude that we need guns, and our children are also getting the same attitude that we need guns, and they're replacing the fist fights and everything with guns, and we definitely need to change that. I'm glad to hear your girlfriend made it in the incident. But what happens is that's an isolated case. Most of the cases that happen out here now, the same gun that she would have had in her house most likely would have been used against her, and she would not be living today.
Well, I tend to disagree with you. If in the heart of your hearts, if you know that if someone is going to take your life and you point that gun at that person will usually turn around and leave.
If you have time.
There's many times
How
there
many
is
people
plenty-
have that time?
Many times they have plenty of time. If you're in your bedroom at night and you have your door locked to your bedroom and you hear someone breaking into your house, you hear that person in many cases, and so you have some protection. There's nothing wrong.
Our children hear you and other adults that talk about guns as being the answers to
I'm not saying
what's happening out here. And this is
believe me,
what
it's not,
the whole
it's-
community is doing.
It's not the answer. I think we have to train our children at a young age to respect adults.
How about training them to educate them instead of training them
Train
shoot
to
guns?
educate them. To train them. Do you think to hear?
My son was killed to gun violence.
And my heart
this is
goes
what's
out
happening.
to you. My heart goes out to you.
There's an
and
epidemic
I think our
going on,
society
Patton.
and our churches and our school and our parents do have to teach our children. It's horrible what's going on out there, but at the same time, there are people, there are women who are victims, and they're walking down the streets and have no way to protect
Women
themselves.
aren't the only victims. The man sitting right next to you is a victim of one kind as well. This is John Clooney, everybody. He's from Norwich, Connecticut. On May 24th, 1993, John's wife, Elaine, and 13-year-old son, David, were killed execution style by a friend of his son with one of John's handguns that he kept there in his home. Before we talk to John, I want you to take a look at this tape from American Journal.
When 52-year-old John Clooney lost his wife and only child in a brutal slaying, he lost everything. Today, a simple grave marker serves as a grim reminder as to why David and Elaine Clooney, two people so full of life, are no longer alive. May 24th, 1993 started like most days in the Clooney household. John and Elaine left for work, and David caught the bus to school at Norwich Free Academy. A mile down the road, the bus usually stopped for David's good friend, Michael Bernier.
We met Michael and his family when he was about 6 years old.
As children, Michael and David were in the same Cub Scout pack. Both were altar boys. John Clooney says Michael was a frequent visitor to his home.
There was never any outward signs of abnormal behavior or obnoxious behavior or anything that would give you that indication.
But 2 years ago, the quiet and seemingly normal 15-year-old committed an act so vicious and brutal, it paralyzed a community. Michael Bernier murdered John Clooney's family. According to Norwich Police Chief Richard Abley, Michael Bernier skipped school on the day of the killings. He broke into Clooney's home, watched videos, ate, and then began shooting guns Clooney had locked away in his room. Bernier used this canoe for target practice, then killed the Clooney's dog. By the time David Clooney got home from school, his decade-long friend, Michael Bernier, was hiding in a closet with a loaded and cocked .357.
He walked into his room and he never walked out.
Michael Bernier fired a shot into the back of David's head. Moments later, Elaine Clooney came home and walked into her son's room.
She must have had a few seconds of unbelievable fright seeing her son lying there in a pool of blood.
This time, Bernier stepped from behind the bedroom door and pulled the trigger. Michael Bernier was arrested 9 hours later. He was driving Elaine Clooney's car.
What do you say as we talk about as we talk about gun control? What?
My answer, I'm not anti-gun. I am a modified version of guns. I don't think guns that are designed to spray an area or just or have 2-inch barrels and large clip capacity designed to mow down anything within a given range should be banned. Regular weapons of target practice and stuff like that should be handled by responsible people. They should be sold in gun stores only, where they can be licensed and controlled and registered, not in Walmarts, not through catalogs and stuff of that nature.
But John, after something like this happens to your family, I mean, I think most people would expect you to go, no more guns. I wish I'd never had that gun.
I think that's an extreme, but I think you've got to realize if you've got the kind of mind that's going to premeditate murder, I think the weapon becomes irrelevant. If you are going to commit murder, such as in my case, you could stand behind a bedroom door and stab him with a knife. The murder occurred in your mind before you pulled the trigger.
So what you're saying is guns don't kill people, people kill people.
The frame of mind is there. The thing where the gun becomes an issue when you have easy access to it in a period of passion or rage or spur of the moment, that's where access to a gun becomes an issue and should be locked up and controlled. But when you're set out for premeditated, vicious murder, I think the gun becomes irrelevant because you're going to murder no matter what you get your hands on.
So if you had to do it all over again, you would still have those guns in your house?
Well, I've had guns for 30 years. I used to collect pistols, and I have a permit. I've had a permit for 30 years. I live in the farm country. We shoot out our back door, shoot beer cans and bottles. There's deer out there. There's pheasant. And guns handled in the right hands are fine. The problem is the people that are irresponsible, and I think that you really got to make examples out of the people that use them irresponsibly. I think that's your answer. Not banning the guns, but hanging the people that use them. And if they're premeditated murder, you don't have any mercy on them.
Whatever happened to the young man who took your family?
He pleaded guilty first he pleaded innocent, and it was 20 months in the juvenile court. And we were trying to bring it over to the adult court. My case was the one that changed Connecticut laws to try juveniles as adults for murder at age 14. Mm-hmm. And so he was brought over in January of 95, and he pleaded guilty in July of 95. And he was sentenced to 60 years, no parole or no appeals. And they told me they were going to make a plea bargain for 70 years. Now wait a minute, I want to get finished with this. The judge, I thought it was going to be 70 years. So the judge lowered it to 60. And I said, I wonder if a judge would give a juvenile, 30 years per murder if it was his wife and son. That's 30 years. In the state of Connecticut, murder is punishable by 25 to 60 years. That's 30 years of murder, 5 years above the minimum. Then if you add good time that he's entitled to, which is 10 days a month off his sentence for the first 5 years, and then 12 days a month off his sentence if he has no trouble in prison, he can get out in 42 years or at age 58, 59. Mm-hmm. So he can get 21 to 22 years per murder. Mm-hmm. And he can walk the streets at 58, 59. Well, at that point in time, I'm dead. They no longer consider him a threat. They don't want him in prison when he becomes a problem in their 60s for aging. And they figure they put him out there on some other social program and it won't cost him as much. Mm. My argument is that he'll still have an opportunity to go to a restaurant, go to a beach, whatever. My son will never see a sunrise or a sunset. He shouldn't see anything but the inside of a coffin.
Stories like the one we heard John just tell, there are those who say it's our constitutional right to still carry guns. He reveals why, our guest coming up, why guns only make it easier for criminals to commit crimes against law-abiding citizens. We'll continue our discussion about guns when we return.
Are you enjoying this episode of Rolonda? If so, please hit the subscribe button and let me know. Leave your comments and also follow me in other forms of social media at Rolonda Watts. Remember, that's ROLONDA, Rolonda Watts on all forms of social media. And if you're interested in voice acting, my goodness, let me help you. This is a new year coming. It could be a new you, a new career. Check out my voice acting masterclass at Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and I'll tell you all about it. Let's get back to the show. And if you're interested in being a voice actor, why don't you sign up for my free webinars and find out all about it? Just go to Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and push the button to sign up for my free webinar. So come on, let's get you prepared for maybe a brand new career in this brand new year. Check it out, Rolonda.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
I think each of us has a different feeling about what a gun would mean to ourselves, to our families, if we kept them in our homes. And we've been hearing some differing opinions here. John was just telling us a horrible tale about how a gun in his home was turned on his own wife and child. And you still believe that people should have a gun if they so rightly want one?
Well, it depends a lot on how responsible they are. Who makes that determination? It will have to depend on the family and the people in the family. I don't think guns should be kept loaded in the house. I think that's an invitation for disaster. I think they should have trigger locks on them. Ammunition should be locked up. As far as having a gun ready or available for somebody breaking into your house, chances are they're not going to break in your house when you're there. Okay, so I think for your own protection, I think that you should keep this stuff under lock and key. I wanted to say that my wife was a French and Spanish teacher for 25 years. I lost my wife, my son, my whole family. We used to have French kids from Spain, France, and Quebec here. We had 60 kids from Spain 2 months before this happened for 3 weeks. We had the teachers in our homes. And then we had a 2-week break and we had 30 kids from Quebec. And they went back and my wife was killed. So this tragedy, this went on for 25 years because she was a Spanish and French teacher. So this tragedy has affected an enormous amount of kids as well as me. And
we just pulled this information off the Associated Press wire. It says the National Center to Prevent Handgun Violence reports that 91% of handguns involved in accidental shootings came from the home where the shootings occurred. There are 500 accidental shootings a year.
Yeah, but I wonder how many of those statistics will show you that these people kept guns loaded. They kept, when I have a 6-shooter loaded, I have an empty chamber, so if you pull the trigger accidentally, there's no discharge on the first round. How many of them are kept in drawers loaded, unlocked, and where everybody in the family knows it? My guns had trigger locks on them. This kid ransacked the bedroom and found the keys that unlocked the trigger locks. This is how determined a person is to commit murder. If they're that determined, I think the gun ceases to be an issue.
I want you to welcome Roy Ennis now. He is the national spokesperson for CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. He's also a board member of the National Rifle Association. And Roy says that criminals will not obey gun control laws, only law-abiding citizens who will find it more difficult to protect themselves. Talk to me a bit. What is your position after you hear these stories? You think that you're with the Rifle Association, so you believe that every law-abiding citizen should have a gun?
I woke up, Rolonda, after 2 of my sons were murdered with guns. And when I was unable to get people in Harlem, 112th Street and Lenox Avenue, who saw this murder, saw the hoodlums, knew the hoodlums, but they were afraid because the hoodlums were armed illegally, and the decent citizens on 112th Street and Lenox Avenue were unarmed, and they were law-abiding, and therefore didn't have illegal guns. And I realized very quickly, this thing is crazy, that this whole gun control business cannot pass the fairness, the common sense test of fairness, effectiveness, and intent. Simple as that.
I'd like to say one thing. I think, excuse me, the issue here is got to be how you treat the people that use it. You have to make examples out of them. And
you have to catch them first.
Fear is the biggest motivator.
You have to catch them first.
Fear is the biggest motivator for anybody. What's going to happen to me in case
But some of these people don't have a conscience, and they're not
well, you know,
fearful.
I'm glad you said fear, because fear is good. If I am armed and the hoods know that I am armed, they will not mock the little old lady down the street if they saw me coming.
Let me ask you. Let me make this statement.
I'd like to ask him a question, Roy Ennis.
Okay, one at a
Roy
time.
Ennis,
Mike, and then I'll come back to
if
you.
you're saying there's a little old lady down the street and a criminal is going to harm that little old lady, then perhaps maybe if you can step in and do something besides using a gun. You've got to understand there's serious consequences. Are you going to shoot this individual?
If I have to?
If you have to shoot him.
Of course.
You have to understand that if he wants to, he could take you to court and destroy your family.
Fine.
As well.
You've
inflicted deadly bodily harm on him. There are other measures that you can resort to.
But he's a bad guy.
I will put my faith in the hands of decent citizens.
You know, people have to understand that there are serious consequences when you do this. When you have individuals, and I don't know Roy Ennis, and I don't know him personally, and I don't know her, but it feels as though I'm sitting here with people that are, suffer from an extreme case of Chicken Little complex, saying the sky is falling and everyone should be having guns.
2 of my sons murdered, and I'm Chicken Little with the sky falling.
But there are other ways. I'm sorry that your sons were killed. Listen, I was shot. But I'm not going out here screaming and hollering that everyone should be carrying a gun. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Let's deal with the facts.
Period.
Let's deal with the facts. Let's deal with the facts. The facts are these.
The facts are that you're being employed by the National Rifle Association to get out here and promote guns.
Let's talk about common sense. Let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about CORE. CORE is a civil rights organization.
It's a civil rights.
Let me tell you, I've studied the facts. In Florida and Texas, we have photo carry permit laws where any decent citizen, sane individual, can arm themselves legally. Not everyone's going to do it, but those who want to. And what has happened is there's been a dramatic reduction every year.
In what?
That law has been enforced.
There's been a reduction in
violent crime, in rapes.
There's been a reduction
in assault,
homicide.
in murders.
FBI.
I think you have
Simple as that.
I think you have to come.
John, I'm going to let you make that point right after we take this. Let me take a quick break. Our panel is going to talk more about this whole issue when we come back. John, I'm going to let you speak, and I know our audience has a lot to say as well. We'll be right back in a minute. Continue our conversation about guns. John, you were jumping at the bit there with something to say. What was it?
Well, I think that you have to realize there are people born in this world that are capable of committing murder and eating lunch at the same time and wonder why you got a problem. And I think you have to come to terms with the fact that mentally they are as cold as a block of dry ice. And I think that we are always, why is the victim always, or the general public always the one extending compassion? While the other person, I often say that if you give the criminal compassion, you're its next victim given the right opportunity and the right circumstances.
What do you say here?
Well, I'm a member of the Gun Runners, as you can see, and there's 49 gunshot victims in the club, and we go out and talk to the schools. It's a little different with us. I mean, I'm from the South Bronx, and it seems like everybody has a handgun. I think if we go with the gentleman saying that we should legalize guns, and Florida might be a different, this is New York City, it would be a jungle if everybody has a right.
Don't believe that.
By the way, can I say something?
Don't believe that. Let me tell you.
Okay, but wait, can I answer to the other person here, the panel? I don't know how the gentleman still believes that you should have a gun at home, and with the young lady, I don't know exactly if it's correct or not, but I think anybody who should be given the right to hold a gun shouldn't have children, because that's where the problem starts. Once, you know, they say they're going to be, they're going to take care, they're going to put in a safe place, and it usually doesn't happen that way. The kids usually find, you know, the parents putting these guns away.
The parents should be put
The guns
away.
that are killing people are illegal guns. The guns that are killing people are the illegal guns.
Legal guns. The guns
illegal
that are killing
ones.
people are legal guns.
In states where you have legal gun laws,
you mentioned Florida and you mentioned Texas. Murders have gone down, as well as in Chicago. Murders have gone down, but still in those states where they have had concealed weapon carry laws passed, recently Texas in January of 1996, the number of assaults have increased because now you have people out here with a cowboy attitude. In Texas, where they passed the law, the very month right after they passed the law, after they passed the law in Texas,
imagine that.
There was an incident where two men with just a fender bender got involved into a situation and one died. That means one father does not go home to his family. That means another father goes to jail for an extended period of life.
That 1 in 10,000 permits have been revoked in Texas and in Florida from people who had legal permits. 1 in 10,000.
You know, they're trying to pass this.
How many lives were saved by the other 9,999?
What do you say?
You were never going
basically, what I agree with the woman about responsibility is the key issue. And the other thing is, men actually do kill men, or people kill people, like I said earlier, is that if a drunk driver gets behind the wheel of an automobile and kills someone, they don't put the automobile on trial. They put the person, and that's who kills the person, the other person.
You know,
you
don't outlaw automobiles.
Right.
There is nothing wrong with
automobiles.
there is
They're actually
nothing wrong
going
with
after
any
the person, just like they should do. The person that pulls the trigger.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with any tangible item. It's the use of the item. If people were killing each other with screwdrivers, would you outlaw screwdrivers?
Bread knives,
You know,
steak knives.
what you do is you make examples out of the people who use them.
Okay, yes.
I thought maybe, this show might be about preventive violence, and it seemed like everybody talking about,
well, preventive
doing
violence.
violence. You talking about hanging someone.
we all want
He's
to
talking about going in Harlem and shooting people. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You can't stop
Young
if
man,
you don't keep doing
the
that.
only way we're going to prevent violence in these urban centers is when you have serious adults who can be armed legally, be
The only way
trained,
you
and
prevent
can
violence-
protect you.
The only way you
Then
prevent violence
you will
is-
end violence in these
The
urban
only
centers.
way you prevent violence is educating our children that violence is not the end solution.
Right.
Every time there's a fight, every
sounds
time
good.
there's a fight in the home where there's domestic violence, there's a fight in the home, or there's a fight on the school ground, the end result is always a gun. It's always a gun. And these are legal guns where these kids go home, they get mom's gun, they get dad's gun. And Mr. Ennis is dead wrong.
The facts are very clear. The guns that are killing people are the illegal guns, not the legal guns.
That the laws and everything in Texas and Florida, that the rate has gone
And
down.
31 other states.
Okay, fine, but those guns are coming here. The man that shot up the Empire State Building got his gun in Florida.
When we come back, a young man reveals how losing a family member to handgun violence led him to change his life around. We'll be right back as we continue our discussion on guns in America today. Dunlap is joining us now. He's from Chicago, Illinois, and 4 years ago, Kwesi's 17-year-old brother, Lamont, was killed execution style. Once again, we talk about a gun. Since that time, Kwesi has spoken out in favor of gun control so that his community, he says, will be safer for everybody to live in. Explain to me a bit about how that event with your brother changed your life so much.
It was January 11th, 1992, my senior year at Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. And Eric Taylor and Jonathan Judkins, the two brothers who was convicted of killing Lamont, were probing up and down the street on 136th and Low in Riverdale, Illinois. And they knew they were going to kill somebody because they were just walking up and down the street. And some of Lamont's friends had said, you know, you guys watch your back. And Lamont was at the mall, 4 o'clock, doing the teenage thing, buying some sneakers and some clothes. So he comes back home later on, eats dinner with my mom, and asks my mother if he can go out. She said that was cool. So Lamont and some of his friends gets together, and they were going to watch movies and videos later on. So as everyone was leaving to check in with their parents, Eric and Jonathan were still probing up and down the street. And one of Lamont's friends heard Eric or Jonathan say, ain't nothing but GDs around here, and GDs is a local gang in Chicago. So Lamont's friends was like, yeah, whatever, and kept minding their own business. Now Lamont and Shylin, the young lady who Lamont was with at the time, was standing about 6 or 7 doors down from my house. And just so happened, everybody went in except Lamont and Shylin. Eric and Jonathan left the street, came back in a vehicle. They drove the car up the street, made a U-turn. Jonathan stopped the car in front of Lamont and Shylin. Eric gets out the car, approached Shylin. Shylin thought Eric was going to ask for directions, so she stepped back. Eric stepped towards her again, so she stepped back again. And the second time he stepped towards her, he pulled out the sawed-off 12 gauge. And that's when Lamont intervened and said, what's going on, and told Shylin to run home. From that point, Eric turned his attention from Shylin to Lamont. Was like, yo, dude, we got something to talk about. Lamont was like, yo, what do we have to talk about? Eric was like, dude, we got something to talk about. Lamont was like, yo, why can't we talk about it here? Forced Lamont in the car with the 12 gauge, took him 3 miles from our home, and during that trip, they made Lamont strip of all his clothing. And they took him to 142nd Street in Dixmoor. At that time, Shylin went home running to my mother, Diane, somebody kidnapped Lamont. Eric and Lamont got out the car. Eric pulled the 12 gauge, left Lamont naked body in the vacant lot. And 2 weeks later, when they caught Eric and Jonathan had on Lamont's pants and gym shoes.
The question is, can gun laws have prevented that?
Could they, do you think,
No.
Kwesi?
Oh, well, actually-
I want to hear what Kwesi has to say.
Actually, in Cook County, handguns are banned. However, guns are still accessible to young people. And Lamont was not shot with a handgun, he was shot with a sawed-off
That's the
12
point I'm
guns.
making.
Also, too, in the state of Illinois and Chicago, if you are caught with a legal gun, it's a felony. And if you do a drive-by shooting with somebody, it's an automatic death.
So, Roy, what are you saying? That if everybody in the neighborhood had guns, these guys would...
You don't need everybody, but you need enough serious, sane, trained people. In 31 of our states, 2/3 of our states, they have passed full carry permits.
Very quickly, sir.
It seems to me what you're saying is you want John Wayne living next to everybody, running around ready to kill anybody at any given time for doing
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Forget John Wayne, all right? Colin Ferguson got in the train, trapped a train full of people, walked slowly, backwards, shooting people. If just one person was armed legally, we could have stopped Colin Ferguson from the very beginning. Empire State Building, same thing.
But how do we how do we determine, Roy, who that person on the train is going to be? Paxton says it should be a woman like one of us.
Do you know what he's saying about this incident with Colin Ferguson? He's going off with this woulda, coulda, shoulda, but he doesn't know. You don't know what anyone would have done.
Well, I
if
tell
they
you
had been
what,
in there.
this
in that train.
This conversation is certainly making a lot of people think about, should our family have a gun? And a lot of single women may be thinking, should we have a gun? Things to think about if you're even thinking about owning a gun when we come back. Even with those horrible statistics, some of you at home after watching the show may indeed be thinking about getting a gun, and you should listen up. Paxton and Mike, what are the things that you should look for, you should think about as you walk in to purchase a gun?
Before you even purchase a gun, you should take a class and then decide afterwards whether you want to have a gun at home, because it's a great responsibility. And secondly, you have to really decide, if someone broke into my home, would I be willing to shoot that intruder? Because if I don't have that in me, then you shouldn't have a gun. That's very important.
What's important is discretion in the use of that gun. You have to understand, are you going to take someone's life? Is this what you want to do? You may be threatened. This individual may not have a weapon on him. He may threaten you with bodily harm, but you now have the upper hand and you have a gun. There are serious consequences and repercussions that come from that. I mean, you can be sued civilly by an individual who breaks into your home.
But you want to know something?
Take that into consideration. But let me finish. You don't think about just taking a class. Law enforcement officers do more than just take a class. Okay, you have to take about 40 hours of gun classes and learning safety factors with gun, learning how to use that gun and using discretion. You also have to understand behavior. They don't give you these classes. If guns are the answer, then why don't they give you a guarantee when you go into the store to purchase a gun, to guarantee that this gun will protect you?
Well, of course
they don't give you that.
You can't do that.
But they're saying the gun. But they're saying.
Okay, Roy and then John.
If you're gonna buy a gun, ladies in the audience, if you're gonna buy a gun,
and the
you
NRA
call
pays
the
them to say that.
NRA first, or you call the Congress of Racial Equality.
The National Rifle
Because
Association
we will
pays them to
arrange
say
for
that.
you to have classes
the National
in the
Rifle
use of the weapon.
Association.
Okay, that's one place you can turn. John, what do you say?
I'm saying that a gun or education isn't the total picture. The total picture is strong family values. What really keeps a person from committing crimes is strong value systems. And what you got going on in this country is the disintegration of the family and the value systems. And you're getting the end results of that. Now, answers of, and that isn't an answer of education either. It comes from strong family, a cohesive family.
John, I think you're right, because I know myself, and I know so many other people growing up in North Carolina always knew where Daddy's gun closet was. In fact, Daddy took us out and taught us how to shoot.
Now, barring
but it's a different day now.
Barring that, when the family breaks down like it is in this country and the value systems break down, the next line of defense is law and punishment for the crimes. And then and in cases of murder is severe punishment.
Crazy, what do you say?
There's one serious point before we get to Miss Innes. One serious point. We're talking about crime, but suicide is the leading cause of death due to gun violence. There are more suicides committed in the United States than accidental shootings, than intentional shootings. And that's what happens. When you have suicide, people are more, when you have a gun available, one is more prone to go and get the gun as a quick fix.
You can use the car.
The problem is accessibility.
You can use
a car is damaging.
Very quickly, what do you want to say, Quay?
Suicides in Japan, and they don't have guns.
Wait, how long ago were your sons killed?
In the 80s.
Did you forgive the perpetrators?
Did I forgive them?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
That's what I feel. A lot of
Why
resentment and a lot of anger. So therefore, now you want everybody else to pay for the pain and suffering that you faced in 1988.
I don't want anybody else to suffer what I suffered.
I say that to say this. I've forgiven the two brothers who killed my younger brother. I met Eric April 28, 1996. I went to Cook County personally to forgive him because I don't want anyone else to go through what my family has went through. And I don't think young people or people in general having guns is a solution to our problem. It starts with forgiveness, and I feel a lot of anger and resentment in him.
I want to catch the guy that killed my son.
Have guns? Of course not.
Keep him from killing somebody else.
When we come back, just for those of you who just want to put this into worldwide perspective, you might be surprised which country had the highest murder rate of handguns back in 1990. Was it Great Britain, Canada, Japan, or the United States? I think you know the answer, but you may be surprised by the numbers when we come back. A report by the National Center for Health Statistics points this out. Handguns were used to murder 22 people in Great Britain, 68 people in Canada, 87 people in Japan, and 11,719 people in the United States of America, the land of the home, the free, and the brave.
Now what does that tell you?
What does that tell you?
That shows what he's saying, with a gun in your hand, you'll be braver. But that's wrong.
That tells you.
We forgot that in the same Japan, Rolonda, in the same Japan, one bunch of nuts with sarin gas kill,
Mr. Innes,
hundreds.
Mr. Innes here, he's with the Congress of Racial Equality. Right now, the National Rifle Association is trying to state that black people need guns to protect themselves. And so they need influence within the black community to push guns. And Mr. Innes, if he's for racial equality, why are you trying to push guns within the black community? You're supposed to be promoting racial equality. And this is not how you promote racial equality.
I am pushing
within
the
black
Constitution to
Much of the
all
crime that we
Americans,
have right
black
now,
and white.
the crime that we have right now that we see so often is black on black crime.
What do you
promoting
say?
this.
From the audience here.
If anything,
And the National Rifle Association
From the audience,
is paying him to do this.
Go.
If anything, it has a lot to do with morality, because people don't really have morals. If you're gonna take someone out of their family, away from their family, mothers losing sons, brothers losing brothers, it's no morals. You got to stop the killing. The manufacturers are the one bringing them in there. Stop.
Do you stop it?
Come on, stand up.
By saying you're going to do it?
What do you say?
Yes, I would like to ask the panel, don't they feel that possibly the use of mace or pepper spray might be a viable alternative to guns?
Yes.
It would be a good addition.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Stand up.
How can we stop the violence? Because there's cops out there, dirty cops out there, selling guns to the gang members. So how are we going to stop the violence?
And efforts are being made to try and remove those cops from every municipality within the United States and in Chicago. And I'm sorry for those officers. They put a black mark on a lot of officers in Chicago that are out there trying to do the job that they are paid for, that love doing that job. I love doing my job. And I've never been involved in anything like that. When I've seen things like that, I've walked away from it and I've reported it.
Good. John?
Simple as that.
Yes.
No,
you should arrest those cops.
No, what you should do is not be promoting guns out here within the community.
You should arrest guys who are committing crimes.
The National Rifle Association pays him to promote guns within the community.
Come on.
John, what do you say?
Right now, the National Rifle Association
How
also...
low do you want to stoop? How low do you want to stoop?
No, I don't get down that low.
How low?
But you got to understand, the National Rifle Association is now trying to promote guns to women. They're trying to promote guns to women, and they're sponsoring the book that she's putting out.
That is not true at all.
We'll be right back in a minute. We'll be right back. I'm sorry, we ran out of time.
Totally wrong, Rolonda.
I know, you said not true. You're wearing on your shoulder here.
That was my daughter Melanie, who was strangled to death in our house exactly 1 year after John Clooney's son was murdered. And I have two comments to make. The first comment is, it appalls me sometimes that these discussions get so out of hand that we forget the victims, the people that were murdered, and the survivors that have to live with that for the rest of their lives. We're getting more into the politics than into the realities of the situation. I am president of a group called Survivors of Homicide of Connecticut, and we see this every day, day in and day out, the effects it has on the families. And one of the cases I like to mention is somebody that was killed by a gun that was purchased in Walmart, legally, over the counter, without going through whatever the procedures were. So this person went, got the gun, stalked this woman, and killed her as she pulled into her driveway. So we are also leading a campaign to try and get guns out of discount stores. If you're going to have guns, at least sell them in legitimate gun shops where they can be regulated correctly.
And responsibility, I think, is the key. I want to thank you for joining this hour conversation. These are discussions you have to have at home with your own family. But be responsible, whatever you decide. And we'll see you next time.
So I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I hope you will subscribe and continue to enjoy. Just wanted to let you know that my voice acting masterclass is now digital. If you are somebody who's interested in being a voice actor, please go check it out. Go to Rolonda.com, Rolonda.com. That's my website, and you can check out all the details and even enroll in my voice acting masterclass. Hey, you'll never know how good you are until you try.